Chapter 17. The Seven Heroes of Teheran. The death of Vahid came as an added blow to the heart of the Bab. He was already in great sorrow because of the suffering at Tabriz, when he learned of the betrayal that had occurred at Niris. Yet even these tragedies were not the only troubles that had beclouded the remaining days of his fast-ebbing life. The Bab's beloved uncle, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali, who had reared him from childhood and who had so faithfully served his cause, had, several months earlier, been engulfed in this same wave of persecution. The Bab's uncle had earlier visited him in the castle of Chirik, fulfilling a prediction the Bab had made some 2 years earlier. At the time, he had been preparing to leave Shiraz to go to Esfahan. He told his uncle, as he said goodbye, "I will again meet you amid the mountains of Azerbaijan, from whence I will send you forth to obtain the crown of martyrdom. I myself will follow you, together with one of my loyal disciples, and will join you in the realm of eternity." When the Bab's uncle entered Teheran, his friends warned him of the grave danger of his presence there. "Why fear for my safety?" he confidently replied. "Would that I too could share in the banquet which the hand of Providence is spreading for his chosen ones." Shortly after this, a traitor who pretended to be interested in the Bab's teachings attended classes and thus secured the names and addresses of about 50 followers of the Bab. He turned this list over to Mahmud Khan, the mayor of Teheran. The mayor immediately ordered that all 50 be arrested. 14 were seized and brought before the authorities. One of these 14 was the Bab's uncle, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali. All 14 were placed in confinement in the home of the mayor. It was on the upper floor of this same house that Tahiri was also held prisoner. Every kind of ill treatment was inflicted on these 14 captives to induce them to reveal the names and addresses of the other believers in the city. The Prime Minister, Mirza Taqi Khan, was informed of their capture. According to historical record, this arch-enemy of the Bab was the son of a former Prime Minister's head cook. He had risen in a few short years from the kitchen to become chief adviser to the king through a policy of self-advancement and ruthlessness. He immediately issued an order threatening with execution whoever among the 14 was unwilling to deny his faith. Several individuals were unable to withstand the pressure he exerted and were released at once. The other 7, who remained steadfast, became known as the 7 Martyrs of Teheran. The Bab's uncle was one of these 7. His friends urged him to escape the trouble that loomed ahead and save his life. A considerable number of wealthy merchants even offered to pay a ransom to free him, but the Bab's uncle rejected their offer. Finally, he was brought before the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister explained that he was reluctant to inflict any harm on the Bab's uncle, because he was a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. Furthermore, he said, eminent merchants of Shiraz and Teheran are willing, nay eager, to pay your ransom. A word of recantation from you is sufficient to set you free and ensure your return with honours to your native city. I pledge my word that, should you be willing to acquiesce, the remaining days of your life will be spent with honour and dignity under the sheltering shadow of your sovereign." The Bab's uncle replied boldly, "Your Excellency, my repudiation of the truths enshrined in this revelation would be tantamount to a rejection of all the revelations that have preceded it. To refuse to acknowledge the mission of the Sayyidi Bab would be to apostatize from the faith of my forefathers and to deny the divine character of the message which Muhammad, Jesus, Moses, and all the prophets of the past have revealed." The Prime Minister grew impatient. The Bab's uncle continued, God knows that, whatever I have heard and read concerning the sayings and doings of those messengers, I have been privileged to witness the same from this youth, this beloved kinsman of mine, from his earliest boyhood to this, the 30th year of his life. I only request of you that you allow me to be the first to lay down my life in the path of my beloved kinsman." The Prime Minister was stupefied by this answer. Without uttering a word, he motioned that the Bab's uncle should be taken out and beheaded. As he was being conducted to his death, Haji Mirza Said Ali called out to the crowd that swarmed around him, "For over 1,000 years you have prayed and prayed again that the promised Qaim be made manifest, and now that he has come, you have driven him to a hopeless exile in a remote and sequestered corner of Azerbaijan, and have risen to exterminate his companions. With my last breath I pray that the Almighty may wipe away the stain of your guilt, and enable you to waken from your sleep of heedlessness." The executioner was shaken by those words. Pretending that the sword he had been holding in readiness needed to be sharpened, he hurried away and never returned. He told the story of that moving event many times, expressing his repentance for the act he had been compelled to perpetrate. Whenever he spoke of the Bab's uncle, he could not repress his tears, which bore witness to the depths to which his heart had been stirred. The second person to fall beneath the headman's axe at this time in Teheran was Mirza Qurban Ali. He was a native of Bafurush, but his reputation was such that he was admired and respected by many of the notables in the province of Mazandaran and Khorasan, as well as Teheran, the capital. So greatly was he esteemed that when he visited Karbala, a vast concourse of people lined the road along his route in order to pay tribute to him. In fact, wherever he went, he was greeted with acclaim. Even the king's mother was a great admirer of Qurban Ali. Because of her close friendship and admiration for him, she told the king that Qurban Ali was being branded with lies. "He is no Bahá'í," she insisted. "He has been falsely accused." So they sent for Qurban Ali. The Prime Minister brought him to the palace under guard. His arrest had already caused a commotion such as Teheran rarely experienced. Huge crowds followed Qurban Ali as he was led through the streets. Some cried out encouragement to him. Others wondered what he could have done to deserve such treatment. The people packed the approaches to the government headquarters, anxious to hear some words about his fate. At first, Qurban Ali was treated with great respect. The authorities assured him of their confidence in his innocence and expressed concern that so grave an injustice should have been done to him. They believed a false charge had been made against him. Qurban Ali replied that although he didn't know whether the Bab accepted him, he had accepted the Bab and considered himself one of his followers and servants. The authorities tried to persuade him to give up this foolishness. He was far too intelligent to be anyone's servant, far too important to lower himself in the eyes of his fellow man. They promised Qurban Ali a permanent salary and a generous pension if he would deny this misguided sect and recant his faith. Qurban Ali spoke with quiet conviction. "This life and these drops of blood of mine are of but small account. Were the empire of the world mine, and I had 1,000 lives, I would freely cast them all at the feet of his friends." The Prime Minister himself tried to show Qurban Ali the foolishness of his stubborn attitude. "Since last night," he said, "I have been besieged by all class of state officials who have vigorously interceded on your behalf. From what I learn of the position you occupy and the influence your words exercise, you are not much inferior to the Bab himself. Had you claimed for yourself the position of leadership, better would it have been than to declare your allegiance to one who is certainly inferior to you in knowledge." Qurban Ali shook his head. "The knowledge which I have acquired," he boldly retorted, "has led me to bow down in allegiance before him whom I have recognized to be my Lord and leader. Ever since I attained the age of manhood, I have regarded justice and fairness as the ruling motives of my life. I have judged him fairly, and have reached the conclusion that should this youth, to whose transcendent power friend and foe alike testify, be false, every prophet of God from time immemorial down to the present day should be denounced as the very embodiment of falsehood." The king and his mother each in turn tried to sway Qurban Ali from his belief, but neither the sweetness of bribes nor the threat of death had any effect. The treasure that the Bab offered him, he said, was matchless. Seeing their astonishment at his refusal to accept honors and riches in place of death, he tried to explain. "I am assured of the unquestioning devotion of over 1,000 admirers, and yet I am powerless to change the heart of the least among them. This youth, however, has proved himself capable of transmuting through the elixir of his love the souls of the most degraded among his fellow man. Upon 1,000 like me he has, unaided and alone, exerted such influence that, without even attaining his presence, they have flung aside their own desires and have clung passionately to his will." The Prime Minister hesitated. He was reluctant to pronounce the sentence of death against one of Qurban Ali's exalted station. "Why hesitate?" burst forth the impatient victim. "Are you not aware that all names descend from heaven? He whose name is Ali, in whose path I am laying down my life, has from time immemorial inscribed my name, Qurban Ali, in the scroll of his chosen martyrs. This is indeed the day on which I shall seal with my life-blood my faith in his cause. Rest assured that I shall never blame you for your act. The sooner you strike off my head, the greater will be my gratitude to you." The Prime Minister became angry. "Take him away from this place," he cried. "Another moment and this dervish will have cast his spell over me." Qurban Ali replied, "You are proof against that magic that can captivate only the pure in heart. You and your like can never be made to realize the enhancing power of that divine elixir which, swift as the twinkling of an eye, transmutes the souls of men." Infuriated, the Prime Minister rose from his seat, shaking with anger. "Nothing but the edge of the sword can silence the voice of this deluded people," he shouted. "No need," he told the executioner, "to bring any more members of this hateful people before me. Words are powerless to overcome their unswerving obstinacy. Whomever you are able to induce to recant his faith, release him. As for the rest, strike off their heads." As Qurban Ali was led to the scene of his death, he spoke with exultation. "Hasten to slay me," he cried with joy, "for through this death you will have offered me the chalice of everlasting life. Through my withered breath you now extinguish, with a myriad lives will my beloved reward me, lives such as no mortal heart can conceive." A great crowd pressed in about him. He said that the promised one had arisen in Shiraz in the purpose of the Bab, but the people were deaf to his call. Qurban Ali cried, "Oh, the perversity of this generation! Though my soul brims over with ecstasy, I can, alas, find no heart to share with me its charm, nor mind to apprehend its glory." He approached the spot where the Bab's uncle had been slain. When Qurban Ali saw the broken body, he gathered it into his arms. He looked out over the sea of hatred, and then summoned the executioner. "Approach," he told him, "and strike your blow, for my faithful comrade is unwilling to release himself from my embrace. and calls me to hasten together with him to the court of the well-beloved. The blow was struck. Sounds of distress and sorrow stirred even through that hostile crowd as the two martyrs were united for all time. The next of the 7 martyrs was Haji Mullah Ismail. Like Qurban Ali, Haji Mullah Ismail had planned to go to the fort of Sheikh Tabasi to join Mullah Hussein and Qudus, but he had been stricken with illness. When he recovered, he learned that the siege was over and his friends had been massacred. He began to teach the faith with renewed energy in an effort to make up for the tragic losses of the cause of the Bab which had been suffered at Tabarsi. Mullah Ismail was arrested in Teheran with the others. He was told that if he would give up the Bab's faith and denounce its author, he could be released. Otherwise he would suffer death. He refused. As he passed through the crowd, they cursed him and threw stones at him. Even at the headman's block, a few personal friends broke through the crowd and tried to persuade Mullah Ismail to deny the Bab. They pleaded with him. Mullah Ismail looked away from them and looked towards those 2 martyrs who had preceded him. They were still entwined in each other's embrace. "Well done, my beloved companions," he cried, fixing his gaze on their gory heads. "You have turned Teheran into a paradise." Drawing from his pocket a coin, which he handed to his executioner, Mullah Ismail begged him to purchase for him something which he could sweeten his mouth. This the executioner did. Mullah Hussein took some of it and gave the rest to the executioner, saying, "I have forgiven you your act. Approach and deal your blow. For 30 years I have yearned to witness this blessed day, and was fearful lest I should carry this wish with me unfulfilled to the grave. Accept me, O my God," he cried, turning his eyes towards heaven, "unworthy though I be, and deign to inscribe my name upon the scroll of those immortals who have laid down their lives on the altar of sacrifice." Mullah Ismail was still offering his devotions when the executioner, at his request, suddenly cut short his prayer. The deaths of the other 4 martyrs of Teheran followed in swift succession. For 3 days and 3 nights the bodies of these heroic men remained abandoned in the public square adjoining the imperial palace. Thousands gathered around their corpses, kicked them with their feet and spat in their faces. They were pelted with stones, cursed and mocked by the angry multitude. Heaps of refuse were flung upon the remains. Not one hand was raised to halt these atrocities. The religious authorities refused a permit to grant the bodies to be buried. They were cast into a pit outside the city, where, in a common grave, they remained as united in body as they had been in spirit when they kneeled at the headman's feet. One of the most significant things about these 7 martyrs of Teheran is that they were men representing all of the most important classes of Persian society: divines, dervishes, merchants, shopkeepers, and government officials. They were men who had enjoyed the respect and consideration of all. Furthermore, they died fearlessly, willingly, almost eagerly. The eventful day on which they were executed brought to the Bab more secret followers than many sermons would have done. The testimony of their actions and their fervour of their devotion to the Bab's cause left a deep and lasting impression on all who were present. Thus closes the tragic story of the lives of all but 1 or 2 of the chief disciples of the Bab. A relentless foe had struck down in swift succession Mullah Hussein, Qudus, Vahid, and the Bab's uncle. This same wave of hatred had also swept to destruction Tahiri, Qurban Ali, Mullah Ismail. The wind of death now changed direction and blew towards the Bab's prison castle in Chirik.